Hey everyone, we have a great discussion for you all today. I'm joined now by historian and YouTuber Christo. Aivalis. Christo, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me again.
Now, you have a new piece in Canadian Dimension titled Parliamentarians Unite to Block NDP Wealth Tax Supported by Supermajority of Canadians. Now, we're going to get into this because I did a video on Mariam Monsef getting caught on a hot mic during her vote against this wealth tax motion. So first, before we even get into the wealth tax specifically, right now we have Liberals and Conservatives crying about the deficit, that Liberals did too much for Canadians apparently. Now we all got to go back to austerity. Then we have this wealth tax motion pushed forward by the NDP, which I guess would be a way to kind of deal with this. Yet you have the other parties voted down. So first, discuss what this NDP motion was about specifically.
Well, the basic argument was that whether it's during this, this crisis we're all living through right now, and even before that, if we want to not just get back to normal but build a better society, the argument is we're going to need to raise revenue, whether it's to get everyone back to work or fix the missing things from our universal healthcare system like pharmacare and dental care. We're going to need money. And where we should at least start, even if it's not enough to pay for it all, where we should start raising that money is off the richest people. And the issue in Canada, as it is in the United States as well, and this is what Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren and others have talked about, is that, we don't tax wealth. If you just tax income, you actually leave out the very richest. You'll get doctors and lawyers and, highly paid tech workers. But if you want to actually tax the richest people, you have to hit them in their wealth, right? And that was the argument. You have to have a wealth tax. And it was a pretty modest 1% wealth tax on all wealth above $20 million for an individual. So if you have, $21 million of wealth, it's really only a $10,000 tax. It's really not a whole lot of money. It certainly won't cripple the rich and wealthy and well-connected, but it was like a start. And it was also combined with a more general call for an excess profits tax, similar to what Gillibrand and Markey and Sanders were calling for, which is to say the richest companies and the richest people from, say, mid-March till the end of this year, we should tax a portion of how much their net worth has grown because they're essentially, enriching themselves off the suffering of workers and small businesses. And we need to rectify that. And that was the basic argument. Singh has long talked about how, we got to do better than getting back to normal because normal sucked for millions of Canadians.
Yeah. So the NDP, of course, being their motion, they voted for it. The Greens also voted with them. Why would the Liberals and the Tories vote against this? I mean, what is I guess the question is, what is their incentive for not supporting this wealth tax that, as we'll get into as well, is also supported by, the vast majority of Canadians?
Yeah, no, certainly. We'll talk about it. But as I noted in the piece, the vast majority of Canadians support it, but also a pretty healthy majority of every party. So it's not like every NDPer supports it and it's balanced out by a lot of other people sort of being iffy on it. Every party gives massive support to this policy. And I think it comes down to the fact that, with the Liberals and Conservatives in particular, they need the votes of working and middle-class Canadians to win power, but they don't represent working and middle-class Canadians in their government processes, right? And I think that's what's crucial. There was a similar example earlier on this year, like you mentioned that, there was talk of deficit, and, before COVID hit, both the Liberals and Conservatives promised a middle-class tax cut in the last election. And for both of those parties, the majority of benefits went to people making above $100,000 a year. Like, that's who it paid off for the most. The Liberals sort of capped it at if you made over a couple $100,000, but the chief benefits went to pretty well-off people, like people that make good money. And so the NDP said, hey, look, let's cap the tax cut at $90,000 and then take all the money that would have gone in tax cuts to anybody making six figures and basically fund dental care for 5 million Canadians that don't have it, because it's the same amount of money basically, and the Liberals, Blocs, and Conservative all blocked that. With the Bloc, it's interesting because they used to be more social democratic in their approach. They were not too dissimilar on economic issues from the NDP, except that they were separatist, right? But they've become, I guess, more traditionally like neoliberal under Blanchette's leadership, especially. And so I wonder if it's an ideological thing. And also, to be clear, it might just be a quirk in the polling. The wealth tax was least popular with Bloc voters. The Bloc voters dislike the wealth tax more than conservatives. So it could be them responding to their party being the least popular.
Now, when it comes to blocking a tax that would impact their own pocketbook, books, as you know, they all make around six figures, that makes at least more sense in that they are protecting themselves. But when it comes to wealth over 20 million, I'm not sure how many MPs have over 20 million in wealth, and it's definitely not the majority that voted against this wealth tax. So why? Like, why? Is there an actual reason why they would be against this, apart from the fact that I guess that's the company they keep? I mean, this would be an obvious signal, I would think, to the lower and middle class to say, hey, we're on your side. We need to get through this. And yes, we should tax wealth over 20 million. But for whatever reason, like, what is the incentive to be against this?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, like you said with the hot mic, Maria Monsef, she makes $250 a year. Now that's a ton of money. That's like many times what the average family makes in Canada. So I don't want to suggest it's not a lot of money, but it's also like it wouldn't even put you in the 1% in the US.
Yeah.
Like you got to be like in the 300s, I think. And she's not old enough to have saved all this money. We're not talking Pelosi types where they have like 50 million, 100 million in net worth. Bill Morneau, he might have had 20 million. Justin Trudeau doesn't have 20 million in net worth. I'd be surprised if he does. Mm-hmm. I think it's a mixture of the fact that even though we have donation caps in Canada, you can't cut a $1 million check to a political party. A majority of billionaires donate to the Liberal and Conservative parties. If you look at the 100 richest people in Canada, Nikki Ashton has pointed this out, basically 50, 60 of them donate to both the Liberals and Conservatives. And so these relationships are built. Justin Trudeau has gone to private parties on the islands of Aga Khan, and they travel in similar social circles. And these people lobby both formally and informally for policies that benefit them. And I think part of it is ideological, that despite the fact that the average working and middle class liberal conservative Bloc voter on the ground sees the common sense reality that the rich are not paying their fair share, the ideological underpinning of these parties in particular is that we have to leave the rich to without restraint so they can profit, so it can trickle down. And I honestly think, and this is sort of sad, but it's like I really think a lot of Liberal and Conservative MPs fundamentally believe that like the rich are just better than us and we have no right to tell them how to run their money.
That's amazing.
And like, you're right, even though a lot of these Liberal MPs, a lot of these backbencher Conservative and Liberals are never going to make millions of dollars. They're just not, right? Like, and yeah, it is baffling in a way, but I think fundamentally, as odd as it is, it's a mixture of like, fear of like, stepping on the wrong toes, but also like, I think they believe in this ideologically. It's part of their ideology.